Zacc Call is president of Capita Financial Network. He's been in the industry since 2007, started with Fidelity, transferred over to Capita in 2015, and now is the president of Capita, which is responsible for managing billions and billions of dollars of people's assets. I wanted to have Zacc on so we could see behind the industry, what strategies are out there, how does the industry work so that we can all manage our money a little bit better. Zacc, thanks for being here. I'm super excited to kind of go through this. So tell people, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here? Kind of give us like a 30-second little bio.
For sure. Okay, Zacc Call is my name.
Awesome.
I'm the president of Capita Financial Network. I came to Capita in 2015, and at that time, we had 3 advisors and 2 support staff, and a couple hundred households that we took care of in terms of their financial planning and overall investment management. And then it's just grown from there.
Dang. That's awesome. Cool. So I'm super excited to dive in. I obviously do a ton of financial literacy online. Most of my podcasts are just with business owners in every industry. I met you and Mike, hasn't been that long, a couple months ago.
No, yeah, pretty recent.
But I'm really excited because we can, yes, go through business ownership and success and investing and stuff, but also I almost want to take a little pivot and talk about financial literacy inside this country and stuff that both of us see since we're both in it every single day. So I think it's going to be a really good podcast just for the general audience to get them challenging their beliefs. I'm reading Killing Sacred Cows right now for like the 3rd time.
Okay.
And I feel like there's just so much stuff out there in the financial literacy world that's just not true. It's just perpetuated because it's what our parents and their grandparents taught them, and it's just kind of going on forever. So I'm excited, yes, to talk through your story, but also do a deep dive into some financial topics. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
So Killing Sacred Cows, that's what you said?
Have you never read that?
Heard of this book.
Are you serious?
Who's the author?
I don't know if I could give you the author. I'll put it on the podcast.
Okay. I'll go look for it after
He's
we're
a
done.
financial planner.
Oh, interesting.
And Sacred Cows, it's basically killing all financial myths that we've been taught.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So he challenges the 401k, he challenges the IRA, he challenges, not saying they're bad, but just the way that we do it is broken in America. And so he talks through the financial misnomers almost of it.
Yeah.
Great book. You should definitely read it. So, we'll jump 3 different topics or 3 different sections inside the podcast. First section, I'll let the followers ask you any question. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. So we broke it down to like 5 or 6 of them. Then we'll talk through your story, and then I fire the same 7 questions to every single person on the podcast. So that's kind of what we'll do. But first was the audience question. So first question they asked, are you worried about AI disrupting your industry?
No, I'm worried I'm worried for those who don't use it, don't keep up with it.
Yeah.
My dad was a professional photographer.
Okay.
Growing up, that was his profession. And I remember going to it was called the Deseret News. And at that time, they'd let us come and hang out every once in a while. So one of the best things ever was going downtown. And if you're in this area, the ZCMI Mall was here. And right across the street was the Deseret News, which was one of the 2 biggest papers here.
Yep.
And back then, they were developing film and making prints in a dark room with chemicals. And I remember thinking that was so cool. The smells are very like nostalgic for me. We had a dark room at my house.
Yeah.
All those things just are very, very poignant, right? Well, none of that matters anymore because digital photography came about.
Yep.
And the average photographer out there got a whole lot better with the ability to take unlimited photos on SD cards instead of, 24 shots per roll.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad was to the point where he's sitting at the bottom of NBA games in this little box that was painted on the floor where he had very little space and could, like a gunslinger, get one roll of film out and throw it in a camera in one-handed and keep going, every 25 shots. So like that skill set's also worthless.
Yeah.
So the point is, do I think AI will disrupt our industry? Sure. But do I think it will improve our industry? Sure. And adapt. Like photography's gotten better. Camera quality's gotten better. Speed from image to publish is shorter. And I think that's going to happen within our industry as well.
Yeah. I remember sitting in high school and learning long division. And my math teacher, I specifically remember her words. She's like, you will never have a calculator in your back pocket. You need to learn how to do this. And then fast forward, like, you give me a long division problem, I legitimately could not do it today. Like, I don't even know how to do it anymore. But the concept, and it's kind of a benefit of being a smaller or medium-sized company, is these large companies don't have the ability to adopt AI because they're so big. But those people that are willing to use AI for what it's worth, it will make our industries and our work and our professions better. You just can't be scared of it. Like
Right.
you've got to start to adopt it. You've got to start to understand it. So I think it's a good one.
It's well, I don't know how deep you want to go. Like I have a lot of thoughts on AI in our industry.
Yeah.
How deep should we go here, Braden?
Well, I was talking to Mike about this because it was a similar question. It was worded very differently, but I was like, we've got quants and robo-advising and everything. Do you feel like, I know AI is out there inside of the quant world, but do you think AI has the ability to learn stock trading at a point where ETFs and mutual funds are going to be gone? Like we got pretty deep, so you can go as deep as you want with this.
Yeah, I mean, you could get rid of ETFs and mutual funds if you want, even without AI, because of fractional trade purchases.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a way to get basically rebuild funds within an account, direct ownership of individual securities. I think that's there, and the systems are there that the trade signals could be passed through pretty easily, and they do, and we actually do that already. But from an AI standpoint, the amount of infrastructure required and investment required to develop and build your own AI and then integrate it into your everyday operations is actually, it's a pretty big hurdle.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is that the big players are actually integrating it for us, and then we're benefiting from it.
Oh, cool.
It's been really, really interesting. So our call management software, it now, we didn't even ask for this. 2 days ago, they pushed an update, and it now has AI integrations that makes notes for us on every call that we have, right?
Yep.
And it outlines them, and one of the advisors showed me it and said, this is better notes than I would have taken myself.
Yep.
And it also listed at the bottom the only tasks that were needed after the call was done. And so there was no chance of forgetting it, missing it, not documenting it properly. So that's a good example. And even in my personal life, I coach soccer, and we have a camera that we record the competitive games. And as AI has improved, it's capturing all the different moments of the games and creating its own highlights for us and showing us things that we can give to the players. So what I'm finding is that the bigger players are actually implementing it. And we as advisors, because as an independent advisor, we're not Fidelity, we're not Schwab, we're not Vanguard, we're not the big firms. Although our clients' assets are usually at those firms, we are not those firms. So like a technology research and development budget is not the same for us versus those big players.
Yeah.
So they're implementing it, and then we're benefiting from it, and we are very selective with how we implement it, but we absolutely are already paying for some AI services.
That's cool. Okay, there's some good questions. I actually hadn't read these until now. I'm like looking these over.
Yeah.
With the upcoming retirement of boomers, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like for your business, and do you think it will shrink?
Wow. That question.
It's a good question.
Well, it was, but it was a great question. But until they said, do you think it would shrink? Everything I was like, sounds great, sounds great, sounds great. And then they asked, do you think it will shrink? So I'm trying to get my head in their headspace as to why it might shrink based on baby boomers retiring. For the most part, financial advisors benefit from retirement.
Yeah.
When people decide to retire, the assets become more available to the individual to choose wherever they want to put them, however they want to invest. Investment options become more broad as they leave their employer plans. And typically a financial advisor does a little bit better. And if a financial advisor really adds value and wins a client, the retention rates are fantastic. So, 90, for us at least, 99, 98, 97% each year retention rates on households. And if you have thousands of households, you're going to have a couple that aren't a good fit every once in a while. And so that's going to happen. But the point is, the business, I think, will continue to be strong. I think 5 to 10 years won't change that much.
Yeah.
How we do business, the technology we use, the speed with which we can analyze portfolios, financial planning, tax analysis, all of that's going to change dramatically in the next 5 years. That really doesn't have much to do with the baby boomer situation. The question in particular, baby boomers are going to, and we're actually kind of getting to the tail end of that, of the retirement of the baby boomers. It will continue, and maybe that's their question.
It's almost the passing of the
exactly.
baby boomers.
Maybe that's the question. And what I'm finding is that I always thought people my age didn't have money or didn't have an opportunity to need advice on financial planning. Yeah. And And what I realize now is that they just need a little bit more time. So now we're seeing a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds seeking out advice. The industry is showing that more 40 and 50-year-olds need advice than ever. I think that's why you have such a strong following, is because people are looking for the information. They don't know where to get it. They want to consume it in a way where they don't have to give away everything to someone. They want to be able to kind of test the waters a little bit, build trust. Anyway, the point is, I don't see a big concern about it. This goes back to the same thing as AI, adapt or die. You've got to figure out how to connect with 40 and 50-year-olds right now.
And I think you're spot on. I think that traditional financial advising was so powerful because the average person didn't have access to do it themselves. Introduce the internet, throw in Robinhood. I remember being in my senior English class day trading penny stocks on Robinhood because I've always been a financial freak. Like, it was fun. I had no idea what I was doing. It was absolutely stupid. But I was trying to figure out, like, what's a call? Like, what's a put? How do you do this? Like, I was sitting there having fun. But my generation and the generation above me got tons of information and the ability to go dabble in the financial markets unlike any other industry ever or time period ever. And now we're getting to the point where we realize the gap a little bit because, yes, I can go buy the VOO or VTI and like try to mimic low-cost ETFs and everything like that. And I feel like, speaking for you, I want your thoughts on this, but the biggest change in your industry, speaking to the next 5 or 10 years, is not really going to be in the products that you guys are selling, but in the services you guys provide. Where my generation, we look at Jeff Bezos and Donald Trump and they didn't pay $1 in taxes last year and that's being reported. And we're like, what the heck? Like, I'm being taxed more than ever. What do they know that I don't know? And before that was such a gap, we could never get there. And I feel like there's these firms that are jumping in and they're like, yes, I'll help you with financial advising, but really that's holistic. That means we're tax planning. That means we're retirement planning. That means we're figuring out how to minimize your taxes as much as we can to mimic what that is. And we've never had that opportunity before. Like, the normal doctor, attorney, lawyer, even teacher couldn't have dreamed about minimizing taxes as far as they can now because it was just this complex book that we never could really understand. And I feel like that's almost, if I was to try to predict where true financial advising and true value is going to come, it's not in buying an ETF.
Right.
It's the holistic approach to it where once you have a complex enough structure where you're like, my time is better spent somewhere else, I need you to jump in. That's where I think the biggest opportunities are going to jump in your industry.
Yeah, for sure. So you've got a couple really great points and a really great observation of what's going on in the space. You've got a couple things going on. You have people that are smart enough to handle it. Like, a lot of people are smart enough to do their investments on their own, and they do a great job with it. And there are people that are smart enough but just don't enjoy it, so they're going to delegate that portion, right? And then in that case, we're not talking about like, are we going to perform better? Are we going to perform worse? How's it going? It's like, this is not what they want to spend their time doing. So there's a time component to it. But to your point, earlier, when more automated trading and efficient portfolio construction and automated rebalancing came about, basically the robo-advisor, I think we should be calling them the robo-investor, not the robo-advisor.
That's a good point.
Because it's a robo-investor. It does not tell you how to structure your beneficiaries. It does not tell you whether or not you should be doing Roth conversions this year. It doesn't tell you how close you are to AMT. It doesn't tell you how, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't tell you the deductible portion of a charitable gift based on your AGI. Like, these are things that the robo-advisor is really a robo-investor. And I'm not actually trying to speak poorly about the robo-investor because we all wondered how that would change our industry when that happened. And I remember thinking like, wow, are we going to have to compete against a machine? And I don't know if it's ironic or wonderful or interesting, but the robo-advisor found its way, and I don't think people understand this, it found its way to the back end of the financial advisor software system. And now the financial advisors all operate with the robo-advisor.
That's funny.
So inside this tool, we can now set up these portfolio structures that we love, that we think are wonderful, that we think a client should have, and have technology implement it in a faster manner, in a better manner, in a more accurate manner. So we're not even competing with the robo-advisor anymore. We're using the robo-advisor. And then, okay, so the what that did, and people thought that the robo-advisor would create something called fee compression, where the financial advisor, if he or she was charging a certain amount, that they'd have to lower that fee to be competitive with the robo-advisor. There has been fee compression, but not like people think. The fee compression has not been, you need to reduce your fee. The fee compression has been, here is the fee. If you want to keep it, you have to increase your value. So we've all done that. If you rewind 20 years, you could have set up an investment portfolio, purchased a few stocks, diversified it okay, looked at it every once in a while, charged a 1% fee and said, you're an advisor and I'm doing you a great job. And that just doesn't cut it anymore.
Yep.
And that's fine. I think that's good. I think it's a really, really good change to our industry. So to your point earlier, you couldn't have thought to figure out all the tax rules and the tax situation and the estate and all of that. And your advisor didn't really have to either because you didn't make them do it. Yep. And that's the way it was back then.
Yep.
And the reality is, I think there is this massive opportunity in our industry to be willing to be better than the ones who are stuck.
Yes.
And there's an opportunity here to say, yeah, we're going to pay for our own tax auditing software, which we do. We're going to take their tax return, throw it in, model up future scenarios, point out mistakes potentially, point out opportunities, and then provide them a nice clean report, have a call, explain how that works. Like, that's the stuff that a robo-advisor, that's where it makes it a robo-investor. Let's hook the robo-investor on the back end of an advisor and bring the advisor human into the more complex conversation. And the complexity is twofold. It's either the actual math and financial situation is really complex, or the relationship between couples, or relationship between the parent and child, and the person relationship with their money. So you've got the complexity of the math and the complexity of the emotions. And when you bring those two together, good advisors know how to mesh that, and almost like a therapist, without therapy training, you just learn by trial and error.
Yep.
Like a therapist, you come in and you're like, I hear you, wife, that money means experiences and time with grandkids. I hear you, husband, that money means a scorecard and a big moat around your castle. How would you two like to get on the same page? And then being willing to sit there and listen.
Yep.
There's no tool out there doing that conversation.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think it's really, really smart. And I think a lot of, like I've said it online. I literally think the words I've said is 95% of financial advisors are not worth their salt. And I think it's because so many of them are stuck in their way. And I'm not going to use names or companies or anything like that, but there are so many people that had big books of business doing exactly what you said, just throwing it into an ETF, unwilling to change, saying, hey, I'm 5 years away from retirement, I'm just going to ride this thing out. That it's actually hurt your industry a little bit in the reputation.
For sure.
Because that's what my generation thinks of financial advising. Like, when I think financial advisor, I think, why would I pay someone to just go buy VOO? Like, I can go do that myself.
Which you shouldn't pay someone to just buy VOO.
Exactly.
That'd
and
be
so
bad.
it's finding that 5%. I'm sure it's not actually 5%, but that 5% that really can provide value, find that gap, everything like that. So,
and how do you measure value too, right, Braden? Because think about it. Let's say that you're going to build a portfolio of 15 different asset classes. And in 2 or 3 asset classes, you determine that the very best solution for that asset class is an index fund. Yep. Maybe you determine that within the large cap growth space, markets are so efficient that you don't feel like you can outperform the individual stock picking can outperform the index. So I always think it's interesting when people pin a financial advisor against an index fund.
Yeah.
And they say, well, why don't I just buy the index fund instead of having an advisor? And my question is, if the index fund's the best investment, why wouldn't you want your advisor to recommend the best thing for you in that space?
Yeah.
And then have the advisor focus on a bunch of other things that you need help with.
Yeah. No, I love it. Okay, 2 quick questions and we'll jump into it. What are your thoughts on cryptocurrency? Do you own any, and kind of what are your thoughts?
Yes, I own some, very small amounts.
Yeah.
I love the concept of blockchain.
Yeah.
And I think there's a really, really cool opportunity with the technology that the cryptocurrency has created.
Yeah.
You know, the verify amongst many sources and
Yep.
being able to share data in that way. Smart contracts sounds really interesting to me.
Yep.
Where if you have certain criteria met, that it immediately implements other distributions and payouts and cash. Anyway, you get the idea. I think there's a lot of really cool things out there. I believe that trying to pick winners and losers right now is a very difficult task when you're talking about who's going to benefit the most from that technology.
Yep.
And I think owning coins themselves is a bet on that whole space. So personally, if I'm going to bet on the space, well, let's just explain. So I actually did go in and I bought 3 or 4 different coins, 5 or 6 different companies that all invest. So I said I own a very little, but I put small amounts in all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And 5 or 6 different companies, like really early, this was years ago.
Yeah.
Companies that I believed would benefit from the blockchain technology
Yeah.
and the creation of that and the evolution of that. I think all 5 of these have gone under because picking exactly which startups, and they all promise the world, and I was only buying publicly traded ones because I only wanted to put really, really small dollar amounts. Sometimes I like to put small dollar amounts into something just so that I'll have a reason to watch it.
You'll track it.
You know what I mean? Because otherwise you won't track it.
Yep.
So that was kind of my thought process over here. This was more of just like a tool to help me track it.
Yep.
And then I contributed monthly to coins. Anyway, the point is, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I'm in the technology part of it. I have a really hard time seeing governments being willing to just hand over the control of currency in general to say, yeah, we're actually cool with this unregulated thing over here.
Yep.
I don't see that happening anytime soon without like major unrest.
Yeah.
So I'm not that much of a doomsdayer to believe that we're looking at that much unrest in the near term.
Yep.
So in other words, I think technology is really cool. I think there's a lot of opportunity. But if we're talking about interesting technology, I'd rather spend my time thinking about AI right now.
Interesting. Cool. Okay, last one. I get this all the time. So I run communities that help people with financial literacy. And I get this one probably more often than not. So I am past, their question is, I'm going to tweak it at the end. I'm past retirement age. Is it too late to invest? And then I'm going to say I'm 5 years away from retirement age and just starting. Is it too late? Because I feel like I get that all the time. I'm 55 years old, don't have a ton of money to my name. What should I do?
So when they say too late to invest, do you think that translates to too late to make a new investment?
I think
in like new cash to investments.
So no, I think the vibe I get is they hear so much about compound interest and they're like, I'm done for. Like you have to start investing when you're 20 years old. Do you think you can amass any kind of wealth or set yourself up for retirement when you're 5-7 years away, kind of a thing?
What other choice do you have? I mean, if you're there,
100%.
I mean,
I'll say do something.
The answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
But if you're at that point and you don't feel like you have prepared well enough, I mean, the choice is either make a really great push to the finish line or don't.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Yeah.
You know, you might as well. I think people think that compound interest is some magical thing. And obviously our brains aren't equipped to handle it very well. But it is going to continue into retirement. So money you save 5 years before retirement, a lot of it, you do have a 20 to 30 year time horizon on it until the end of your life, right?
Yep.
So the reality is it's worth it. It's beneficial. You don't really have another choice. You might as well.
Yep.
And a lot of people amass a lot of wealth after they're 50 and 60 years old. So it just depends on your willingness and ability to save. I would say the more important thing to do in that moment, though, is to actually run the math of what do I need to save? Like what kind of, take a step back. I remember this couple, and they were, usually it's the husband telling the wife not to spend money. This is just the scenario I feel like I'm constantly in as an advisor. Husband telling the wife not to save money. They've been frugal their whole lives. We run the math, and they're fine, and they're going to have more income in retirement than they're accustomed to spending today. And had they not actually run the analysis, then husband might have been right for the last 5 years of his career, and wife is finally like, yes, I told you so.
Yeah.
We can do that vacation, right? The point I'm trying to make is run the math to at least know if you are in a tight spot or not. That's the first thing to do. Yeah. And then if you do need to make that push, you're not too late. You're going to get compound interest all throughout retirement. And again, what other choice do you have? You got to make a push.
Yeah. The last thing I'm going to add to that before we jump into your personal story is a lot of those people do have money. They haven't run it to figure out how much money they have. But that is the time when you do need to start optimizing. And whether it's a financial advising or whether you want to take it on by yourself, like you need to figure out what is the most optimal way to set myself up. Because most people are sitting inside of company-sponsored 401ks earning 6% and planning on Social Security. That is probably not going to give you the retirement that you want or dreamed of. But that 5-year period that you have left working is the perfect window to assess what you have. Here's my 401k, here's my IRA. You have a really good idea what inflation is going to be at that point. I'm at 30 years old. I'm trying to figure out how much I need to live on when I'm like 60. It's a dartboard at that point.
No, you're just trying to throw as much away into savings as you can at that point.
But your last 5 years, you have a legitimate roadmap in front of you that you can start to lay. And so I actually think it's the perfect time to sit there and start planning for retirement. Now, they said start to invest, but to the other demographic, that's the time you should really actually take this seriously and set yourself up.
You know, that's how we actually gathered most of our clients is the complexity associated with age 55 plus. Like as it really started to get messy and they're starting to think about, gosh, how does this fit in with Medicare? And what would I do with healthcare from 62 to 65? And how would I take Social Security? And if I take it early, get to leave my portfolio alone. And anyway, all of that combined together, that complexity provides a lot of opportunity for strategy. So yes, it's never too late to build the plan. From an investment standpoint, the person who's already retired, I guess if they're saying, is it too late to invest? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me if you're pulling money from your 401k or your IRA to turn around and reinvest it back. It's like, just leave it. Just leave it invested. You already are. And so that was the part of the question I wasn't quite sure about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But if you have earned income and cash flow, then absolutely make a push.
Awesome. Okay, your kind of journey. So in your intro, you said you joined Capita in 2015. Where were you at before that? Walk me through like what'd you graduate in, and then let's do a quick kind of run up until 2015 when you got involved in Capita.
Okay, so I was actually working at an architectural firm in Utah.
Awesome.
Architectural Nexus. This wasn't right before Capita. This is during college.
Yeah.
So I'm in college working at an architectural firm. I'm married. I have a mortgage. We had a little townhouse, and I wasn't making enough money. And every month, the bank account was getting smaller, and we were good. I felt like we were pretty good at budgeting.
Yeah.
It was an income problem. And so the bank account was getting smaller. The mortgage was $1,000 a month, and it was really tricky. And my wife was working at a bank and waitressing at nights, and I was working at this architectural firm as a runner, and I was going to school at nights. And so we were super strapped and busy and didn't have time, right? So one day my wife called me, and we'd been married for 9 months, and she had tears in her eyes. I could hear it through the phone, and she told me that she just didn't think it was going to work. And she's crying. I'm like, hold on, love, give me a second. So I go out of this architectural firm, didn't have my own office or anything, right? So I'm hiding in the stairwell. All the while, I'm on the phone with my wife. She's crying, telling me it's not going to work. I think she's talking about our marriage.
I was going to say, I don't know what you're talking about either.
Exactly. So I'm like, love, listen, we've only been married 9 months. Everybody fights. It's going to be okay. Like, we'll figure this out. And anyway, I'm like, what do you mean? Talk to me more. And she just said, it's just not going to work. Finally, it came out. She's like, I just don't know if you're going to be able to. So I did studies. I did the tests in school. It told me I should be an engineer, an architect, or work in business management somewhere. And both my brothers are engineers. And I thought, you know what? I'm kind of artsy a little bit, design focused, and I like people. That's the management side. I'll go get a degree to be an architect, and I'll try to run a whole architectural firm. That was like my path.
Yeah.
So that was my wife was saying she wasn't sure that was going to work. Apparently the marriage was safe.
Clarity.
Yes,
Good clarity.
Exactly. I was like, oh, that for sure. I've already started looking for another job. I just haven't found one yet.
Cool.
So then I learned that Fidelity offered tuition reimbursement.
Oh, cool.
So I went and worked at Fidelity thinking it was a short-term thing, work for a few years through school. And they put you through the licensing exams right in the beginning. And I got into the Series 7 exam, and just everything I was learning seemed so fascinating to me.
Oh, cool.
So I'm sitting there learning about options and bonds and stocks and trading and markets and broker-dealers and how all that comes together, and even macroeconomic information. It just kind of sunk quickly, and I just found it fascinating. And at the same time, I'm taking calls at a phone center there, and I'm talking to real people about the questions and things that they have. I'm able to start answering and providing quotes, and then moved up into trading. And so all of that experience just got better and better. I ended up taking a job over there where I helped people with stock options, restricted stock awards, other grants, phantom grants, anyway, employee stock purchase plans. And that got really cool because it was more consultative, because I could sit there and talk to somebody, and I love education. So I could teach them about their options, teach them about the tax effect, help them make decisions, execute it. And it turned into a lot of fun.
That's cool.
So then I ended up kind of finding a lot of enjoyment in it, and got a job at Fidelity where I was a portfolio specialist for a couple hundred clients, and worked my way up. And I was working with clients that had $4, $5, $6 million and up on the West Coast. And I was still in Utah, but I was their portfolio specialist on that. Then I went to the branch in Salt Lake, and that's where you're their full financial planner, basically. And that's when I got a call from Mike. And I didn't...
Did you know Mike, or was this like a cold call?
No. I went to high school with his wife, come to find out.
Okay.
We had biology together. But
Cool.
no, I didn't know that at the time. It was a total cold call. I was at Fidelity, and I really, just be clear, I really enjoyed the time there. I really enjoyed the people there. I really enjoyed so many aspects of it. But that financial advisor job in the branch, that job in particular, was so sales focused, so flows focused.
Yeah.
I just don't do well. If somebody's like, how much money did you bring in this month? Like, that's not, I'm like, but I set up donor advised funds, and we did these cool things over here.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, but you didn't bring in $5 million this month. What's the problem? And it wasn't my vibe. And so I ended up having to, I didn't know what I was going to do at that time, because I just didn't love that. And Mike called me, and you get a lot of calls in that job from recruiters. And so I kind of ignored him. He called me again. We got talking, and then I realized, holy cow, you've got this guy who loves to connect with people, and he just draws people in, and he's a good guy, and he doesn't know what to do with all these clients. I've never heard of this before, but he doesn't know what to do with all of his clients.
Yeah.
And he's telling me he just wants somebody to come in and make good on every promise he's ever made. I'm like, wonderful, I can do that, you know? So I came over and started doing it, and we found a lot of success between Mike and Tyler and me, and we ended up getting a lot of referrals. So this client base that was a couple hundred grew into 300, 400, 500, 600. And then I realized, like, this is a machine that's never going to stop. Like, we're going to keep growing really well. And so I told Mike, I said, look, let's form a partnership. You keep doing what you're doing. I know how this thing should look on the back end. And I can hire financial advisors, train them, teach them how Capita is different, what we do that's different, why we care more about being right on the math, all those things.
Yeah.
And then offer this service in a way that people will love it. And then the advisors will love it, because I won't tell them they have to bring in a certain amount of money every day. And they'll love it because they'll have clients, and clients will. Anyway, so I thought this was a really good opportunity to marry the talents of a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
And we formed that partnership in early 2018. And we had about 600 households at the time. And then now we have 2,500.
Wow.
It was crazy. And we have about 56 employees now.
Wow.
We just got a new one yesterday or the day before. It's been a wild ride, and it's been absolutely amazing.
Do you feel like, this is me more projecting, you get forced, I feel like a lot of us are forced into business ownership. We choose it, but it's not necessarily what we studied. You're a financial advisor. You love it. Has the transition from your passion of helping people and running numbers and planning to managing 56 people as the president of Capita, was that an easy transition for you to make, turning from doer to owner-operator, or do you feel like that was pretty natural?
I think anybody who says that's easy is not being real clear about life.
Yeah.
And be clear, I also don't manage everybody. So there's, just so you know, there's 3 of us, Mike, Cassie, and me. Mike's CEO. Cassie runs 4 departments. I run 2 or 3. But going from advisor to manager, director, executive level, that's basically the path I've had, but it was accelerated compared to a big firm because we created it ourselves. Do you know what I mean? Whereas a big firm, you might do each of those jobs for 5 or 10 years. It's hard. It's hard. But I'll tell you, I always wanted it. Most people will tell you they didn't. That's why I went into like the business management degree I got, is because I knew when I went into architecture, I wanted to actually run the firm, not do the drafting day to day. So when I came here, a lot of my thoughts around how to do advice was always, how do we build it so that the future, it could be scaled 10 times? If we had 10 times the number of advisors, how would it work? Anyway, so I always kind of knew I was going that way. And then it was really refreshing to talk to Mike, and I would tell him like, hey, what about this? Why don't we do it this way? And he would look at me and say, well, why didn't you already do it? And it caught me way off guard. Because at my previous employer, they told me to stay in the box. And so Mike basically took the box and threw it out the window and said, do it the very best way you can imagine. And that was fun.
That's got to be fun. I feel like me and Mike are very similar in the way that we approach business, but to have the ability of a sandbox that you can just build in, it's fun.
Totally.
It's a lot of fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And to your point, it's hard. Managing people's hard. Growing a company's hard. But it's one at a time. I feel like so many people on the podcast will sit there and say, well, yeah, you're managing $2 billion and you're doing this and that. It starts with one person. Like, it's not that hard to grow when you start leveraging people and put them in the best place and surround yourself with great people. It's a domino effect that honestly, once you start, you have to screw it up to stop it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so if you surround yourself with good people, take the time to train them, build leaders, and then just push that first domino down. Get that assistant, get that advisor, get that integrator, someone around you that can make up for your weaknesses, and then just push that domino down and give them room to run. And it eventually turns into something big. And so many people struggle to see that gap. They have a side hustle, or they're picking up a second job, or they're doing something, and they see success, and they're like, oh, I'll never get there. Like, it's not worth it. Or the fact of the matter is, Mike was slinging term life insurance out of the back of his car for years. You know what I mean?
Right. Which I never would have done. I'm so appreciative of him. I did the safe way. And that's why he is where he is compared to me. Like, and his life is super complex, but that's not the risk I was willing to take at the time.
But there's so many different paths to get to where you both are now.
Right.
And I think that's something that a lot of people can learn. Yes, like entrepreneurs that are willing to risk it all and live in the back of their car and live on nothing and go into hundreds of thousands of dollars debt to make it happen, that's a breed. Right. And it exists, and we're crazy. But
I think it's like the free solo guy, like the certain part of that brain that like stresses you out. Like it's turned off for a few people. And good for them, I guess.
I know. But then every one of those people needs that one that can come put structure around them and actually build the business around them and put their ideas in place. And you need to figure out, what do you like? Like, find what invigorates you, what you have a passion about, and whatever you love doing, find a way to monetize that. Because you don't have to go, like, the idea of jumping off a cliff and going pure entrepreneur scares you. Don't. There are so many different other ways. And that's what I love about your story is, like, there are so many ways to find hyper success so long as you put yourself in the right places and surround yourself with great people. So that's really cool. So you got to Capita. How fast did it scale? So you joined in 2015. Partnership was 2018. How many employees from 2015 to 2018? Walk us through growth, if that makes sense. Do you remember?
Yeah. Not very many more. 2018, we had, going through them in my head real quick. So in 2018, we hired our first financial advisor besides the 3 of us.
Got it.
That was it. And we hired, the very first day we set up the firm, we hired a compliance officer, which was totally overkill, by the way. Most people don't hire their own private compliance officer when they've only got like 6 people at the firm. I think we had 7, and we hired a compliance officer. So we had about 8 people. And then we went from 8, I remember during COVID, at the beginning of 2020, we had 12. And by the end of 2020, we had 24.
Wow.
So
you doubled in a year.
we doubled, and that was a spooky year. I mean,
Yeah.
the market dropped 30%
Roller
in 29
coaster.
days.
Yeah.
That was the fastest it had ever done that. I'm sitting at home in my unfinished basement with fingerless gloves because the basement wasn't. I mean, we lived in a house before we were at now, and it was cold down there. And so I looked like the wet bandit from Home Alone. You know what I'm talking about? I was wearing a beanie, fingerless gloves, and trying to just stay away because my kids were upstairs doing their homework and online school. And I'm watching the COVID ticker. And those were spooky times.
Yeah.
And markets were down. And then all of a sudden, a lot of people reached out for help. And we went from wondering, like, maybe our new client sales flow is just going to die off because we were doing almost everything in person, to we went from like $500 million in assets to 1.2 within middle of 21.
Wow.
So it was crazy in terms of assets, clients, employees, everything doubled from like March of 2020 to March of 21. And that was nuts.
And then in the 3 years following, you've over doubled again.
Yeah.
So wow. Do you think this growth is sustainable for Capita?
The doubling effect? No. But if we don't try very hard, like if we just, based on, I know the math on referrals, like if we put a good financial advisor in front of 100 or 200 households, we get 70% of our new assets come from one of two sources, which is either a client adding their own assets, adding more to it because they're happy, or they're sending a friend or family over to us. So 70% is all from our current client base.
Yep.
So that gives you an idea of this business is going to just keep rolling.
Yeah.
And then 30% comes from a lot of our standard marketing efforts. So without any crazy action, we're going to hit $5 billion in about 4 or 5 years, obviously depending on markets and how they go.
Yeah.
The number of employees has been a lot more difficult to predict than the actual assets we manage.
Yeah.
Because as we choose to offer different services, whether it be deeper into estate and deeper into tax, we just built out a central planning team where they don't talk to clients. They're just the nerds behind the scene. And they're really good at it.
Yeah.
So that's a whole new job. Like I just don't know what jobs will exist that don't exist today.
Yeah.
But I think we'll have 100 employees and $5 billion in assets within the next 3 to 5 years.
That's crazy. Another double.
Yeah.
Over double once again.
I think it'll be the next double will happen in 3 to 5 years.
That's cool.
Because it was happening like every year and then every 3 years. And now I think it'll be every maybe 4 or 5 years.
That's cool. Awesome. Okay. So before we jump into kind of the final questions, the 7 different questions, I wanted to talk, I don't do this with every single guest, but kind of jump into some like financial literacy stuff. We usually do like stories and telling all that kind of stuff, but I love when I can nerd out with someone that really understands it. So what do you feel like is one of those ahas that the common DIYer comes in here thinking they've got it all? Okay. I DIY'd my finances for a long time just because I couldn't find someone that I trusted. I walk in this firm. What's like those ahas that the people have? They're like, oh my gosh, like I completely missed this opportunity. I should have thought of that. Because the reason I'm doing this is, one, to help all these people. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people watch this. Let's give them some nuggets that they can make their brain turn a little bit. It's like, oh, I could do that. Let me research this some more. Let me research that. So what are some of those ahas that you feel like the average person is missing that is financially literate and actually investing? But what's that like next level they can take?
Cool.
Does that make sense?
Totally. I'm gonna give 2 or 3 examples of like very specific things that people can think about.
I love it.
And I'm also going to give you several resources where you don't have to talk to me about it. Like
Perfect.
so that people can feel like we really do want to help.
Yeah.
My mission is superior financial planning to as many households as possible.
Yep.
Does Capita need to take care of their assets for that to happen? No. But
That's awesome.
Will we end up with a lot of people who want our help? Yes. So the point is, maybe you're one of those households that I can feel good about you being in a better place with us never meeting. So,
Cool.
Okay, so here are some resources, and then I'll go through the examples. Resources would be on thefinancialcall.com is a podcast I started about 5.5 years ago. Haven't posted recently because life has been busy at Capita, and I have a real job, and it's like a hobby, you know? So I did 8 seasons. Each season is 5 episodes, start to finish, of a different topic. Social Security, taxes, investing, estate planning, business owners, charitable giving, insurance. Like all of those are different seasons. And you can start with the most basic and work your way to the end of the season, most complex. You'll know more than probably most financial advisors, frankly.
Yep.
So, okay.
That is awesome.
Which, by the way, I actually do get a bunch of financial advisors that will reach out to me after watching some of those. And they're like, wait a second, that's how Social Security is taxed?
That's so funny.
I'm like, anyway, so that's the guided path on the financial call. That's a really great resource. You can tap into that. Some of the things I'm going to explain in just a moment, we actually have public-facing Excel tools that we're happy to send people.
Cool.
So if you say like, hey, I want the one that helps me analyze the taxable portion of Social Security over time, like I'm happy to throw that out to anybody. You would just reach out to us at Capita and we can, I don't have it set up right now. You're so much better at online stuff than I am. Like you would have like a button that they would click and maybe they reach out to you. Maybe I give it to you. I don't know.
Put some links under the podcast or something.
Okay. Clearly somebody knows what they're doing here.
No, you're good.
Okay, the third one is I did write a book called The 7 Prosperity Projects.
Oh, cool.
And I tried to keep it pretty cheap online.
Yeah.
It's like $15. And if you're here in Utah, just come in because I accidentally ordered more than I needed. So we've got a bunch here in the office. Come in and we'll just give you one.
Cool.
But if you're out of town, we don't want to get into the mailing business. Just order it on Amazon.
Yep.
But it specifically walks you through 7 projects that should be done in the right order. So a lot of people ask me, hey, I have $100,000. What's the next thing I should do? Or what should I do with that $100,000? It's like, well, where are you at? Like, do you have credit card debt? Have you taken advantage of these different tax structures within the retirement accounts? Have you figured out an emergency fund? Do you have life insurance at all? Like, where are you at in this journey?
Yeah.
And the book has about 30 tasks across 7 projects, and all you have to do is start at the beginning and then start checking them off, and apparently that's your next one, and you go. So that's another resource. You could get pretty much a free financial advisor out of it without having to talk to anybody.
That's awesome.
So those 3 resources. But you asked, what is the aha moment for a lot of DIYers? I just had a call with somebody this week that I've been working with them for several weeks. They have several $1 million in regular IRA money, probably from their 401k accumulating over time, matching, right? They have a lot of money in traditional, and they are panicked. Well, they're not panicked, but this happens often. People are panicked about minimum distributions when they hit 73 or 75.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, you have to take money out when you hit a certain age. IRS says you've delayed this long enough.
We want ours.
We want a piece of this. So they figure out how much life they think you have left, and they divide the portfolio by that, and then you have to take out that portion every year. It starts out at like 3.6 to 3.7%, and then goes up as you get older. So the aha moment is that people often believe their tax bill is going to be worse than it really is. So we'll go through and analyze their entire life of taxes, and we'll even, because you don't realize things change. Assumptions like marginal tax brackets go up over time. So you can't say my tax bill is going to be this in the future with a fixed marginal tax bracket line that hasn't gone up. So frankly, the tools aren't real great out there these days for it yet. But if you do a lifetime analysis of how you'll be taxed throughout retirement, the first thing you'll find is it's not as bad as you think.
Good.
The second thing you'll learn is that it could be even better. So the next thing you do is you start to do what's called marginal tax bracket management, where you look at the marginal income lines and the capital gains lines and portions, these lines where if you go over it, you have higher Part B Medicare premiums, and you watch all those at once. You pull a little bit from your IRA, you pull a little from your Roth, you pull a little from brokerage portfolios, you have rental properties with depreciation and income, and all these things come together. And if you manage it just right, you can have single-digit effective federal tax rates, like high single digits to low double digits, like 8 to 12% average tax brackets for somebody with $100,000 to $300,000 of income in retirement, if it's done right.
Yeah.
Now, all that talk about like zero taxes, that's true for a lot of these really, really ultra wealthy, but the reality is it all comes due at some point.
Yeah.
Like
You're just delaying.
They're just pushing it out.
Yep.
So don't feel like you're missing out. They're just pushing it out. You had zero tax on your IRA this year. The same idea, right?
Yeah.
You'll pay taxes later.
Yep.
But the point is, the aha moments are: 1, taxes are not going to be as bad as people think. 2, they can be better through this marginal tax bracket management process. And then the third thing is the combination of the taxable portion of Social Security, and Roth conversions. And this is where it starts to get crazy, because you could take these accounts, convert them all from traditional to Roth, and potentially get all of your Social Security income tax-free for the rest of your life. I've seen it before where people have $50,000, $60,000 of income and almost like basically a zero tax bill, because a bunch of their Social Security disappears, because Social Security is a two-part calculation to then a two-part calculation, the lesser of those two, and that's what you have to pay taxes on. So a lot of people, it just disappears if you manage it right. Now, the other option, though, is if you watch it really carefully, maybe your effective rate is averaging 15% right now and 18% later. You can time your conversions just right so that you can fill in those lower years. So basically, everybody should know what their average effective rate should be throughout all of retirement. And your goal is to bring the bottom years up, which will bring the top years down. And that's how you know what years you're doing conversions in. And then you're carefully looking at, I've seen people say, oh, I'm in the 12% tax bracket. So I'm going to do, for every $10,000 I convert, I'm going to pay $1,200 in taxes. They do the conversion. They're like, my tax bill went up by $2,000. What happened? That's 20%. It's because Social Security got added in as they did the conversion. So the combination of those two things together becomes a really cool tool, and it needs to be looked at every year, because as soon as you've done 1 year's conversion, you now have a new lever to pull. You could withdraw from the Roth. So now you have a little tool to play with, and it's actually every year it changes and creates new opportunities.
That's so cool. So one thing, I'm just trying to dumb this down as far as I can. Roth versus traditional, just real quick. Okay, traditional, you don't pay taxes in because you're going to pay taxes on the way out.
Yes.
Roth, you pay taxes on the way in, so you don't have to pay them on the way out. Most people live in the traditional world. Traditional 401ks is the most used retirement account in the United States. But there's a way through the conversion where you can convert a traditional IRA or 401k into a Roth 401k or IRA. And that's what he's talking about doing. But this is so spot on. I feel like this is going to make my social media sound a little bit negative. I love putting financial literacy out there. But sometimes I want to nerd out more than I can, because this is the stuff that really gets me excited.
Yeah, but nobody else cares, Braiden.
No one else cares. One, it's not going to get any views.
Right.
But I have to put out the best information for the most amount of people. That's like what I do. But there's a lot of people that can benefit from this kind of stuff. When you really start tax planning, especially if you have fluctuations in income, you can do this pre-retirement. If you're self-employed, sales, 1099, anything, and you have low years, start converting young. You know what I mean?
There's like so much opportunity
if I run at a business and all of a sudden go buy a couple buildings and have a massive depreciation, I'm losing $300,000 that year just because of, as a business owner, that's honestly not that far-fetched. Convert like crazy that year, bring your income up to zero or a little bit more, pay maybe a little bit of taxes. But this process is the way that it's not tax evasion, it's tax preparation. And you need to start thinking that way. And this is the opportunity cost that a lot of people are missing when they DIY.
Yep, most people don't realize that some of the very best tax strategies are the ones where you purposefully take taxes now to avoid a lower rate later.
Yep.
Most everybody thinks tax strategy is pay the least amount possible today.
Yep.
And the best opportunities are actually on the opposite side of that.
Yep. And then the other side that drives me nuts with my industry of financial literacy online is we position stuff as a one-size-fits-all. So many people is like, oh my gosh, I want to do a Roth IRA, but I can't do it. I make too much money. I'm like, that probably means it doesn't make sense to do a Roth IRA right now. You know what I mean? Like, you need to actually understand what we're educating on. I educate on Roth IRAs all the time online because it is a great option for a lot of people, but you should not agree with 100% of what I say because there is no one-size-fits-all. My hope is that through podcasts like this and through online education, through your podcast, through your book, through everything we put out online, I hope you disagree with me like 20 to 30% of the time, because that means you're thinking critically and actually doing your job to be educated. But that also means if you're not disagreeing with me, or if you're taking everything we say at face value and then just doing it and not consulting with professionals, that means you're losing a ton in opportunity costs or doing it very, very poorly. And so I am a huge proponent of being educated. I self-managed for a really long time. But there comes a point in hopefully everyone's life where it gets too complicated, where you need to start getting advice from professionals. And that would probably be my biggest takeaway here. And I don't know when that is. For some people, it's 23 years old. For some people, 62 years old. I don't know when it is in your life when that opportunity cost starts outweighing the potential fee you might pay, but it will outweigh it. And it's just a matter of when that moment is. And I hope that you don't believe all the financial literacy people online saying financial planning is dead and advising is dead. Because yes, if financial advising was the same way it was done in 2005 today, it would be dead.
Yeah, for sure.
But there are those people out there that are challenging status quo and good. So this is not a sales pitch.
Totally.
I'm not pushing anything. I just want people to think critically about everything that we're doing with their money, because it's the difference of having a crummy retirement and an amazing retirement is just a couple key decisions.
I think you're absolutely right. If people want to say the proof is follow the money in terms of my industry, most private equity firms who have any familiarity with our space at all are trying to buy firms like ours as much as possible because they realize that it's a longer term business that should stick around, has staying power, has a lot of value. I'm not saying all financial advisors are good. We've established that.
Yeah.
Let's just make sure we all establish that. But the money is flowing towards it in terms of investment opportunity, and the firms are growing. And I actually think there's never been a better time for someone to be able to be a financial advisor with there's so much more access to tools and resources. You couldn't, if you were a solo advisor in the past, you couldn't have had automated, like we talked about earlier, rebalancing and CRM softwares to keep track of clients and scheduling software. All of these automations that are coming about, I don't think there's ever been a better time for someone to run their own solo advisory practice and be able to provide really good advice. It's important that people understand too that there are different flavors of financial advisors, in particular the way we get paid.
Yes.
So some people don't want to pay, they want to self-direct all their investments, but they want advice on their financial planning.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a flat fee advisor. You need to be hourly, project-based, or maybe monthly retainer. Those are the three different types of flat fee. That's a whole group of people. The benefit there is your fee isn't going to change with your portfolio. The disadvantage there is they're not going to push the buttons for you. They're not going to do the trading. They're not going to manage it for you. And then the advisory fee portion, they're going to charge you a percentage on assets. So just understand that there's a difference there. And then on top of that, there's commissions and there's insurance. And I prefer to not have a manager make money on trades. That's the wrong incentive. We want, whether it's time to trade or not time to trade, you don't want the advisor to thinking about their bottom line in that moment. So I don't love that.
Yeah.
But an AUM fee, meaning somebody who's charging on assets, or a flat fee based on project, retainer, or hourly, all of those can work. And those are the different flavors to look for. We're assets under management. We found that implementation has been poor in some cases if we don't just get in and make it happen.
Yeah. And I talk about real estate a lot. A lot of the people I've had on my podcast have been real estate focused just because that's my industry. I liken it to rentals. My first 2, 3, 4 rentals, I managed myself. I was there fixing the toilets. I was there turning the screwdriver. I was there fixing it up, doing everything I could because it was worth it for me to do it. I wanted to learn it. I needed the equity. I didn't have the money to do it. But once you get 2 or 3, you realize that paying a property manager is the best money you've ever spent in your life. And as I looked at all the big people, the ones that had 100 door, 200 doors, none of them are stinking changing fixing the toilet. I think it's the same thing. If you look at most billionaires, millionaires, 100 millionaires, they have financial advisors. In fact, eventually they go to family offices, start bringing stuff in-house. It's so important to them.
Yeah, they pull the financial advisor into their own employment.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're so good. They're you're mine.
Exactly.
And so it's the same kind of thing in life where there is a moment to learn. There is a moment to educate. There is a moment, just like in real estate, where it can be. But then the most successful people aren't that way. And so start mimicking that. Start mimicking what you actually want to be. not the people that are on the way up. So I think that's really, really good. Okay. So at the very end of every single podcast, actually, before I jump in this, I have one more question for you. And with hyper successful people, this is almost the question for me to learn. Through this, since 2015 to today, business ownership, it is very difficult to figure out a work-life balance. I know you have a wife, you have 3 kids, twins. What has that been like for you? What did your life look like in the beginning phases, 2018, starting the partnership? What is it today? And how have you found, what advice would you give to someone that's starting a side hustle, starting a business that's trying to navigate this like work-life balance of business?
Might be the biggest failure of my life, trying to figure that out.
Why does everyone say that whenever I ask that question?
When I first started here, I remember I would get up in the morning before work, and I used to play pickleball at the local rec center with a lot of the retirees that were there all day. And they would smoke me because they're there all day.
Yeah.
And I would play for an hour or so and then go back home and get ready and come into work. The thought of having that time is just so foreign to me right now that I can't imagine. It is a constant conversation that my wife and I are having. She's super smart, and I consult with her regularly. Like, what do you think? What should I be doing different? Like, how do I create space? How do I create time? I've found that it's better for me. Like, having an assistant is hard for me. Because I need someone to own things entirely rather than try to take care of the things that I own.
Interesting.
So rather than hiring assistants, I have found I've needed to hire very highly qualified professionals. And then I step out of it. Because if they keep trying to guess how I want things done, then it's like, I mentioned I coach youth soccer. Like, if the kid keeps looking over at the coach, is this how I kick it? Is this how I do it? It's not as efficient. They're going to make poor decisions. I don't have the right angle on the field. That kid does. So I've found it's better for me to bring talent in and let them run and try my best to get out of the way. And that's been probably the biggest time saver for me than anything. I tend to be very technology focused, and so I find the best like executive assistant type roles that I have are actually software and technology and and automation and those things. So from a work-life balance, it's a constant struggle. If you want to own a business, especially if you're going to have people that scale your business with you, you're going to have the craziest conversations about the most random stuff at the most random hour of the day. And the whole family better be on board with that.
No, it's good. I feel like so many of us so many people work a 9 to 5, dream of business ownership, start a side hustle, start doing it. And then they realize they thought when people talk about freedom, it meant freedom of time. It doesn't mean freedom of time. It means freedom of everything else. Potentially freedom of money, freedom of creating your schedule and like managing that a little bit, freedom of growth, creating, leveraging. But there's phases to it. And I feel like every single business owner I've talked to and asked this question to, everyone says it's one of the biggest failures. And I think there's something to be learned about there. Like life, no amount of success in life can make up for a failure in the home, in my opinion.
Right.
And that's why I live. That's my kids and my wife are why I'm doing all of this. And so trying to manage that, constant conversations, checking in with her regularly. She understands what she signed up for. Like she knew I was going to go into business. It was who I was, but it's the unspoken expectations that are what will cause conflict. As long as we're on the same page and she knows it's an 18-hour day or I'm traveling, we're good. But it's just having those conversations.
Well, and being good about communicating it early, right? That day, like this is what's going to happen. I've found that you have, I imagine that I've got this deck of cards and each card is a yes. And there's only yeses in my hand, right? And I've got 10 of them. And I get to hand them out. And then once I'm out of cards, they're all no's. Everything is a no.
Yep.
So I try to apply that concept in life, and it's why. So my wife and I both played competitive soccer. We love the game.
Oh, cool.
We love the the coaching part of it I really enjoy now. But that's the only reason I coach. When my kids are done, I'm done.
Yep.
I coach, and we'll be in probably 7 states over the next 6 months
Jeez.
with soccer, and
Fun.
it's fun and
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun and it's exciting. But that's my yes. I say yes that way to my kids, and it makes it so that last night I was with my 16-year-old daughter for 2.5 hours plus drive time, and we get to talk about things, and she gets to show me music that she's interested in, and that's my yes. And I know that sometimes that yes makes me leave work early because they have a game that starts at 5 and warm up starts at 4:15, and a 45-minute drive, whatever it is, to the game.
Yep.
So anyway, I think as we start to think about a limited number of yeses, and then being willing to let everything else be a no, that changes it around.
Yeah.
Saying no is really hard. Saying yes is easy.
Yeah.
Just making sure that you guard the yeses.
That's cool. That's a good way to think about it. Okay. I asked the same 7 questions to every single person. So I'll kind of rapid fire these. We'll go quick through them, but I just love hearing everyone's point of view. So first one, what are the top 3 pieces of advice you would offer someone who is starting their career in financial planning?
If you have an icky feeling, you're right. Just leave it there. Like, if you're there and it just feels wrong, your leadership is teaching you this business incorrectly. That's super important.
That's a cool one.
And that probably can be applied to more spaces than most. But our industry is chock full of folks that are doing things for the wrong reason.
Yep.
Okay. So if you have an icky feeling, you're right. Get out, fix it, go somewhere else.
That's cool.
There are good places to work in our industry. I'm a little biased, but that's actually one of my biggest passions. I save financial advisors from other places. Really high quality, altruistic, passionate, ethical people. I can pluck them out of their environment, put them in ours, and they flourish. And guess what? They actually close a lot of business because they're just good people, and people trust that. And you take what I call commission breath off, and all of a sudden people start giving them referrals.
Yep.
Okay. So advice 1 was, if it feels icky, get out. 2, I'd get the CFP. I would just get it right away.
Okay.
Like as early as possible, I'd get it. Certified Financial Planner designation. There are so many designations out there. It is your ticket to play in this industry. And if you're taking the CFP and you're like, I don't think I could implement any of this in my current job. That's how I felt at times. Like, I couldn't implement this. My employer won't let me think this way. You're in the wrong spot. Get out. So there's the icky feeling, and then there's the I can't actually plan this way.
Yep.
Like I'm being taught through the CFP. Those are both like moments of it's time to think about getting out. Okay. And then the third one is try to get as much exposure as you can to the different business models. So I'll give you an example. There are outfits that are called Turnkey Asset Management Platforms, TAMP. I can hook up our firm to a TAMP and have access to hundreds of investment strategies that with the click of a button, we can implement multiple of these in one account. That's an RIA. That's a registered investment advisor firm. So are we. Like, we're very different business models.
Yeah.
And they're both considered registered investment advisor firms under the SEC's regulations. And that's why the SEC's having such a hard time figuring out who can do what and when and why, is because those two businesses are technically under the same umbrella. They don't even talk to the clients most of the time. And we engage with them every single day. So they don't have as many concerns maybe about what they say, and we don't have as many concerns about trade execution. And you can see how we care about it and we audit them to make sure they do it, but we're not pushing those buttons on that. So, okay, so understand, do you want to work in that type of environment, which is way more analytical, cerebral, philosophical, debating investment strategy, or do you want to sit down with somebody and maybe at some point they're crying in your office and you want to walk them through that? Maybe at some point you're educating them on something financial and then this light bulb goes off and you're like, I love that. Like that. Depending on who you are, you're going to gravitate to those two different roles. And these two businesses are actually close together compared to a lot of the other financial services companies out there. So the 3 pieces would be, if it feels icky, get out, get the CFP, and if you can't implement it, start looking around. And then the third one is get a really good feel for the different types of businesses before you, and you could do internships, you could just research, you could talk to people, like just get a good feel for the landscape.
Those are good. That was gold. Okay, if you were to start from scratch today, you had $5,000 to your name. How would you approach building a financial portfolio?
A portfolio, not a financial advisory firm, not a side gig or hustle. Are we talking like?
Let's do both, but let's go start like the business of let's start like a business, and then also how would you build your portfolio if you only had $5,000? What would you do?
Starting a business. Okay, so at this level, you will not get access to a custodian. They're just like, where's your 100 million in assets you're bringing?
Yeah.
So I would talk with places like Altruist. They're a company that was built by Jason Wank, I think is his last name. And he basically, the idea is let an advisor with almost no money hook up to a platform and have an investment option for clients. And they'll have a lot of software. So I'd probably use Wix.com to create the website myself. And I'd probably set up with Altruist, Apex, one of these firms. And I would go to all-in-one compliance solution. I know that RIA in a Box was one. We've never used those because we brought all of our compliance in-house and hired attorneys to like really customize our compliance program.
Yeah.
But they have all-in-one solutions in between compliance, and then you would need a CRM. It'd be really hard to do all this under $5K, but I think you could get there pretty close by DIYing the website and hooking up to a platform like Altruist. And your CRM is going to cost you about the $5,000.
I love it.
And then your investment portfolio was your other question.
Yeah.
What would you do with an investment
If you
portfolio?
had $5,000, how would you invest it?
It kind of depends on who you are and what your goals are. If you're really, really young, I would pay that in tuition by buying things that you think are smart.
Yep.
And I would just go. Like if you're young, we call that tuition. Like you're going to lose money on some of those. Some of the best lessons I learned was when I was trading a portfolio in 2007 and 8. And in particular, in 2008, when the market was dropping, I had a pretty highly volatile stock that I was messing around with, and it would drop, and I would buy the dip and try to ride it back up and hurry and get out before it went down again. And it was in the financial services industry. I knew the thing was going down, but I was just trying to buy the pops as it went, right? Such a great learning experience. And it was good because it tested both my emotions and my intellect and all those things together. And so you need to first realize that that's not that much money in the grand scheme of life for you. You're probably going to have a lot more money later. Your $5,000, maybe take $1,000 or $2,000 of it and buy a couple index funds so that you understand how those work. And then the rest, go do what you think is the smartest thing you can do in different just at a brokerage portfolio and learn and just learn. Get used to trading.
I love it. What is the worst investment you've ever made?
Private investment with somebody trying to set up a bunch of restaurants and just it evaporated.
I was going to say, went to zero?
Yeah, it evaporated.
Yep. What'd you learn from that? Curious. What would be your biggest takeaway?
Listen to your wife.
That's a great lesson.
She was totally skeptical from the beginning.
Yeah.
She knew it was a bad idea. It is never something. So in the book, I talk about like the first 5 or 6 projects are all very important. Project 7 is swing for the fence. Like if you've got all 1 through 6 done, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And you can throw money in the toilet if you want, in number 7, it doesn't matter. So this was kind of one of those swing for the fence, have the right mindset going in that we knew it could go to zero. I was glad that I did it with money that didn't matter.
Yep.
That was important.
Yep.
So I was really happy about that. I was surprised at how little it actually affected my life. I thought that I would, losing that much money, if you would have rewound the clock 10 years ago, I would have thought that I was going to spend the next month in bed crying over it, But I'm amazed at how much I don't care. And I'm happy because it actually made me a couple really good friends that invested together in it. And we travel with those friends, and my kids
really
know
cool.
their kids, and I would pay that whole investment over again for those relationships, right? So I learned those things, but the biggest mistake, their two biggest mistakes, would listen to your wife and do more due diligence. On an investment for a client, I would have scoured that thing up and down. But, with your own money, you don't worry as much.
That's probably my biggest worry is like, I teach stuff online and most people don't even know that private markets and private investments exist. Like they're like, oh, that's for hedge funds. And like, I can't ever get access to it. You just need the right network. But so many people, once they learn about it, get super excited about it. And then they'll go chuck everything they have into some swing for the fence kind of investment. I'm like, no, like those can bring great returns. Like you hear stories all the time about the home runs in private equity, or even like real estate's a little more secure, but it's still risky to go invest in like pieces of real estate in the private world, syndications or debt funds or whatever else it is. But I think your point, that should be the swing for the fences money. You should have such a foundation set up that you don't care if it goes to zero. Yeah, it's not going to be fun. Like you're probably going to be pissed at yourself, but that's the type of frame of mind you have to go into those investments with. But then if you can go in and you have like, if you do like 5 or 6 of them and one of them hits, it really can be great money for you and turn your retirement into something you could have never had. It just has to be done the right way with the right thought process in it.
Yeah, and maybe that test should be if you're a spouse or if you're a couple that neither of you would stress about it if it was lost, because you might not stress, but maybe your spouse
would stress for like $2.
So maybe. Okay.
Okay. What's the best investment you've ever made?
Let's go defining best in 2 different ways. The highest rate of return in the shortest period of time.
Sure.
And I'll give you that one. And then the most successful in terms of it's doing exactly what I predicted it would do over time. Because that's different, right?
Yeah, it is.
The shortest return over the shortest amount of time, I would never have guessed that it would work like that. One of these friends that we invested with, we bought a lot in Mexico. A lot, like sand. Like literally bought beachfront property in Mexico for super cheap out in the middle of nowhere in Mexico. And we thought it was a good idea, and it was super complex and there were times where my wife was like, what are you doing? You have an accountant that goes by La Pistola in Mexico. Your realtor goes by the Captain. And she's like, and you're wiring money to a bank account in Mexico. Like, if you have another family out there and I don't know about it, I will look so stupid.
That's so funny.
To everyone out there. So but my wife's really witty and fun. So it worked out really well. We ended up holding it for a while. A Four Seasons hotel. It expanded the city, and an Amman was announced. And so like just from proximity, it did well, and it almost tripled in value during that like 3-year window.
Dang.
Which was really cool.
Yeah.
And dumb luck.
Yep.
Dumb luck. I literally bought it because I love going to Mexico. I actually love visiting there. I love working on the Spanish. I love engaging with locals, eating Mexican food at dives. Like, I love all of it. And I thought we were going to just go and build like a house on it and visit it regularly. And back to the time conversation, I don't have time to be anywhere else or to manage a building of a home in another country.
Yeah.
So we decided, and the money to do that would have been tricky for us at the time. So we just sold it.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It was really crazy.
What's the one you predicted the best?
This is going to sound really boring, but I have several different portfolios. Ones where I use our trade signals from our third-party money managers, ones that I do internally, and just a group of about 40 stocks, U.S. stocks, that has had lower downside capture and higher upside capture. So basically, take the S&P 500, and then when it goes down, could you lose a little less than that? And when it goes up, can you make a little more than that?
Yep. With
the same amount of like overall volatility without accidentally taking on more risk. That's been the most... I would say the best in terms of doing what I wanted it to do and actually seeing it. The best that wasn't dumb luck. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay.
Which is it's a big part. Everyone can get lucky every once in a while, but when you actually like think through an investment, plan it out, and it actually does it, it's like a good pat on the back moment. You know, I was like, I actually know what I'm doing. Look at me go.
Well, the scary thing is sometimes that happens by luck, and then you attribute it to success, and then you bet bigger the next time, and it happened to be luck. And you know, those things are tricky.
For sure. Okay. What industry are you most excited about outside of your core business? The way I'd probably think of that is like, if you were to invest money outside your core business, what one would you go throw money at that you're like most excited about?
That is fascinating. You just changed it. I was going to say everything AI. I'm
Yeah.
actually really pumped about what's happening
Yeah.
there.
That would probably be one of mine too.
I think, but it wouldn't be, I wouldn't go invest in AI.
Okay.
I would go find an inefficient industry and come in and make AI like dominate that space.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, and then in particular, labor intensive services. So anything where it requires a lot of manual entry and manual time and just people serving people, less the sale of a hard product, but more of a service. So I would get, and it's hard because you say like outside my industry, I would actually probably look at anything like taxes and estate planning and like all the other categories that are right next to us. And I think that's probably just because I'm really familiar with them.
Yeah.
Not because I think they're the best investment opportunities. They're just the opportunities I see, right? I think investing is a lot that way. Like you just what you're familiar with and what you're comfortable with.
I actually think that's really wise. Like a lot of people will try to choose stocks just because someone told them to, or they think it's fun or it's flashy or whatever else. If you're going to try to go choose stocks, do it in something that you actually have knowledge in, that you is around your industry, that you have a leg up over most of the rest of the people. If you're in medical sales and you know a company's going to do well because you're in it and you start seeing them and your products start popping up, but it's not reflecting stock price, like you have a leg up over everyone else because you're in that world. It's the same thing. That's what you're saying. It's like invest in what you have knowledge in. That's the Warren Buffett strategy. Like he didn't invest in Apple forever because it's like, oh, I don't think this will happen. Now it's a huge holding of his. Same thing with crypto. He hates crypto because he's like, I don't understand it. But he won't invest in something unless he understands it and it's inside his wheelhouse.
Right. I think that if I were to take it outside of my industry, I would go into something like home builders or someplace like that where the people who are already in the industry are pretty like less comfortable with technology or less interested in technology. And then I would insert the technology side into it and see how you could revolutionize it a little bit with the tools that already exist and see how it goes from there.
100%. Okay, last question. Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently in your career if you were like giving advice to someone?
I've learned that in hiring and managing people, a lot of people think that they need to work on their weaknesses, and I don't think you do as much. I just think you need to accentuate your strengths. And you'll find the most success by just really hitting your strengths hard. And so I think if there was something I could have done earlier in my career, it would have been to identify my strengths earlier and find a way to put me in that environment earlier. That would have been a lot better than I was trying to. Braiden, I read so many self-help books when I was working in that sales job. I thought I was the problem because I just wasn't able to sell like everybody else. And it turns out I just needed a different environment. I just needed somebody else, an environment where I didn't have to pressure and then the sales would come automatically. So that would be one. And if you said like, what is the exact job for you, knowing what we went through over the last 20 years, my calling in life was either this, but I think it could have been equally a software developer company.
Yeah.
Because of I got sucked into Excel. Like I just understand and love the formulas and how it all works together and conditional statements and all of that. Like how do you read database? How do you organize things? I would either have been a computer programmer or this, and in either way, I would have found a way to manage the whole thing if I could have.
Yeah.
But I don't look at that as a regret in any way because I think if I had done that, I would have missed the opportunity to feel so good about helping people. I don't think I'd have the same reward of helping the individual with their life. The main thing I've learned at Capita is to put people in an environment where they can accentuate their strengths rather than trying to fix their weaknesses. Yeah. I found that it's really hard to change who we are, like at our core. So find out like where you're best and then put yourself in an environment where you get to do that. And I think that would be the one thing I would do different. It would be to put myself in an environment where I could use my strengths and not have to feel like I had to work on my weaknesses so much.
It's articulated well. I feel like Same thing. Tried to work so much on weaknesses that you almost forget the strengths. And what I've learned now is just surround myself with people that compensate for my weaknesses so I can just focus on my strengths. But when you're doing what you do best, people get the best out of you. But yeah, I think there's this like egotistical side that I had where I was like, oh, I can do everything best. You know what I mean? Like I can fix it. But to your point, why fix it? Like it's never gonna be a strength.
Nobody orders a burger at a sushi restaurant, right?
Yeah.
Like get the good thing that they do the best. And now in terms of weaknesses, I do think we should work on our ability to be more charitable, kind, understanding, like all of that stuff should happen. But when it comes to professional output, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, agreed.
Like professional output, hit your strengths hard and then leverage those.
Yep.
So I think my strengths are best suited for an environment where highly technical information is being thrown at you. You need to organize that information in a digestible way for people. And then an environment where you actually do need to care about people. Like that's because I do. I like really love people and care about them. So whether it be the employees that work here, the clients, my heart goes out to all of them, like probably too much at times. And I'm swayed by that a lot. But it's kind of a weird pairing to put someone that's highly mathematical and like really loves people together.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why the financial advisor role and the company like speaks to me so well, is because it's the intersection of math and emotions and people. And I like all of that a lot because there's a constant battle between, well, mathematically, we know that's the right choice, but we know that client's not going to do it.
Yeah.
So how do we, in which case are we going to compromise here today?
Yep.
And that's fun.
100%. Well, honestly, this has been fun. I love these types of conversations. If anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way? Email, phone, socials? Like how can someone get in touch with you if they want to?
Yeah. If you're talking about me specifically, I would say you can go, I'm on Instagram. I have, my mom likes my channel. You have 1 million followers. Same.
Yep.
But you can find me. I'm Zacc Call with 3 C's because of Zacc and then Call.
Wow.
It was spelled wrong at birth. And then, so then there's that. LinkedIn, for sure. You can connect with me there.
Cool.
Probably the easiest way to get a feel for, if you want to understand how I think from a financial planning standpoint, it's going to be that guided path or the book.
Yeah.
If you are just like, I just want to talk to Capita, I want to talk to Zacc, you can reach out to us, capitafinancialnetwork.com. That's going to be our website. And then you can email us and reach out, just say, hey, I saw Zacc talking to Braiden, and we can get you more information. We have 18 financial advisors and about 55 employees. And depending on schedules, we'll for sure do like free consultation with anybody who wants to talk to us. And our goal is kind of like the whole Boy Scout motto, like leave them better than we found them. Yep. So in one appointment, my goal is to get you something that puts you in a better financial place than when you came to me. And then a bunch of ideas for you to think about after that. And good will come of all of that together.
Yeah. And it's like, that really is how we met. Like I was talking to Mike, he was helping me figure some of this out, talk through it. Like it's rare to have a financial advising firm so focused on financial education. Like you really do put a lot of good materials out there. So go consume it. Like his podcast, his book, a lot of the stuff out there really, really is good, and take them up on a free consultation. Like
for sure.
You can learn a lot and they really set you up. So thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and make sure that you subscribe so you get notified for future podcasts because we have a lot of fun guests coming.